Everybody, welcome to the ACLU Media Line. This wonderful event featuring Cynthia Nixon, kicking off our 3-year campaign to end Florida's heinous ban on adoptions by gays and lesbians. We are so proud to have you here tonight.
The ACLU enlisted celebrities to help us, such as Cynthia Nixon, who recently came to Miami and gave a very stirring speech to a group of mostly straight people who were open to hearing our message.
The stand becomes much easier to take when you have a personal stake in it. So I think when you, as a gay person in Florida, have been a foster parent, and then you see the risk of those children being taken from you, not to go back to their biological parents, but to be thrown back in a pool and wind up with strangers and you don't know, potentially be separated, these brothers be separated.
When Cynthia came and told them that she was an out lesbian raising children in a happy and healthy home, it was an audience that was ready to hear it.
I think the time has certainly come to repeal this ban. I think the ACLU is attacking it so intelligently. They're putting so much firepower behind it and so much ingenuity. And I think, you ask most people in Florida, do you think gay people should be allowed to adopt children? The majority say yes. So this is just really an antiquated law we have on the books, thanks to Anita Bryant 32 years ago. We're so lucky to have Martin Gill as our centerpiece, as our example of what a family is and should be, and why this ban should be repealed. And I think it must take a lot of courage to do what he's doing. I think it must be extremely emotional and extremely painful and frightening at times. But I also think that in some ways he's not brave because he's only doing what he absolutely has to do, what any parent in that situation would do, would say, you're trying to take my children away, they're my children, I'm going to fight and I'm going to do everything I can because they're my children and they belong with me.
It's my pleasure to introduce to you, if I can find him, oh there he is, Martin Gill, our plaintiff, the father of foster care.
I don't think that I knew when I was getting into this process that I was becoming a public figure. I certainly had no intention of becoming a public figure. I think we've always been very low-key, very private people, myself and my partner. And we really had no intention of being in the limelight or being activists or anything like that. Taking legal action against the state, certainly that wasn't our goal in being a foster parent. We were very happy being foster parents. We pretty much support the judges and the system. We had fostered before, enough children before we knew how things worked. And we were pretty happy being foster parents. I think had it not been for these two children coming into our life and seeing the bond that they have, and then knowing that in order to get them adopted by what the state felt was an acceptable family, they would have to be split up. I mean, that just broke my heart. That gave me the resolve to go ahead. I have to tell you, when I first went to the ACLU, I just wanted a quick solution. I wanted this done now. Come on, these kids, you're fighting for your kids. I'm like the mother that if a car's on top of her son, she can lift it up. Well, I could do that for my kids. I'm not sure I could do that for my partner, but I know I could do it for Rob, but I can do that for my kids. And that's what keeps me going in this case. On the first day when we received these children, we noticed something right away. I went to change the baby's diapers, and the 4-year-old tried to butt in and change them for me. He wasn't comfortable with me changing that baby's diapers. I backed off a little bit, and I let him do it, and in 30 seconds he had that diaper on, he had that baby cleaned up, and he took the diaper to the trash, everything, he had it down. A little while later, I'm feeding the baby, and he keeps trying to get in between us and feed the baby. And so I let him sit between us because I wasn't comfortable with him holding the baby. And when the baby finished the bottle, he reached over, grabbed the baby, and went like this and burped. And the baby burped just like that. The point is, he knew exactly what to do. He was taking care of that baby. Okay, he was his brother's keeper. Now, here it is, a year and a half later, and DCF says, we're not good enough to adopt them. But on top of that, they're saying in order to get them adopted and get them permanency, they're going to split them up. And to me, you're going to split them up in the name of permanency? What is that? It didn't make any sense.
Everybody in this case, from the judge to the Department of Children and Families, everyone at the state of Florida, the children's own biological families, all agree that these kids are thriving and doing great in Martin Gill's home, and it is in their best interest to be adopted by him and to stay in that family permanently. There's no disagreement about that.
Some people would call me a gay activist or whatever. I feel that if anything, I'm an activist for a little boy who's now 5 and another little boy who's now 9. I feel that I'm doing the right thing for them. This is in the best interest of those children. I am absolutely sure of it. We're good parents, and we're the only parents that can give those kids the continuity that they need. You know, another disruption in their lives, in their young lives, makes no sense whatsoever. We're the only ones that can give them that kind of permanency, if the goal is permanency. And really, the best way to do that is adoption.
In November of 2008, Judge Cindy Lederman in Miami-Dade Circuit Court held a 4-day trial. We placed in evidence the scientific evidence of how children do with gay parents. The world's foremost authorities came and testified.
The expert witnesses that were called on behalf of Martin Gill did a wonderful job of dispelling myths that we already knew to be untrue, that had already been established by the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, and all of the other leading professional mental health associations as patently untrue and unfounded and based on faulty research. As Michael Lamb testified, there are no data to support that children raised by 2 daddies or 2 mommies are any less well-adjusted than children raised by heterosexual parents. The capacity to love is shared equally by men and women, and this is the core ingredient in the raising of a healthy child.
Basically every major child welfare organization and child health organization, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Child Welfare League of America, the Evan B. Donaldson Adoption Institute, all have come out squarely against the adoption ban because the social science really shows that what's important is that kids have a home and a family, and a parent's sexual orientation or gender is not important. It's important that the children have a nurturing and loving environment.
Judge Lederman, after hearing this evidence and the state's evidence opposing it, made a decision in a 53-page ruling wherein she held that the evidence was clear and virtually uncontested that kids do great in gay homes, just like they do in straight homes. And so there was no rational basis under the sun for a law that would outright ban every gay family from adopting children. At oral argument in the appellate court in the 3rd District Court of Appeals, the attorney for the state, Timothy Osterhaus, stood up for the first time, and when he was asked by Judge Salter, what is it that you would like us to do? What does the state want the judges to do with these kids? Mr. Osterhaus answered honestly, I think for the first time, that the state intends to take these children from the only home they have ever known and place them for adoption with another family whom they have never met. When the judge asked that question and when Timothy Osterhaus answered, there was an audible gasp from the courtroom. And the judges looked at the state's lawyer and finally said, "Thank you, that's all we need to hear."
I don't think anybody has been able to make the case that gay Floridians are intrinsically unfit to be parents. I don't think anybody's been able to make the case, and the best proof of it is that Attorney General Bill McCollum tried to find an expert to say exactly that in Florida's courtroom.
George Reeker's career as one of America's loudest voices in the anti-gay, cure the gays movement, his career has fallen apart ever since this picture of him appeared in the Miami New Times.
And in 2008, here in Florida, George Raker served as an expert witness in a case to uphold the law banning gays and lesbians from adopting. The state of Florida paid him about $120,000 for his testimony. Attorney General Bill McCollum's office told us Rakers was recommended after an exhaustive search.
Rakers had been hired by Florida in 2007 to testify as an expert witness in a trial regarding the ban on gay adoption. Florida's Attorney General, now the Republican candidate for governor, Bill McCollum, paid Rakers nearly $120,000 for his expert testimony, which was later deemed not credible.
So George Rakers' most notable achievement is co-founding the Family Research Council with James Dobson in 1983. He worked for a long time at UCLA trying to turn quote-unquote effeminate boys masculine. Lately, he's been on the board of NARTH, the group that tries to turn gay people straight. George Allen Rakers had testified in 2001 against gay adoption in Arkansas, and his testimony there had also been thrown out for the same reason, that it was religious bunkum. So I don't think Bill McCollum really has an excuse in this case, especially after we caught Rakers with his rent boy.
Penn had a friend that he knew on, or an acquaintance that he had met on Wilton Drive at one of the bars in Fort Lauderdale's gay ghetto. And at some point this fellow said, "Do you know a guy named George Allen Rakers?" And as it turns out, Penn's acquaintance was the ex-boyfriend of Giovanni Roman, the rent boy. And he had been given access to Giovanni's email account and had taken screen captures of some of the emails confirming, you know, the dates of the trip and whatnot. We went to the airport, we brought our pink camera, and it turned out that it was all legit. I called Rakers the day after he returned from Europe.
Hello?
Hi, George Allen Rakers?
Yes,
Hi, greetings. My name is Brandon K. Thorp, and I'm a journalist with the Village Voice media chain, and I'm recording this. I hope that's okay. Well, I'm just curious why you were traveling. I mean, given your career so far, I'm curious why you were traveling with a 20-year-old male prostitute with long blonde hair, a swimmer's build, and an uncircumcised penis.
Oh, I just found out about that while I was on the trip. He was advertising himself as a travel companion, and I cannot lift luggage.
Initially, Giovanni said that there had been no sex, not even a come-on, that he had just taken Rakers on a tour of Europe. But then when we interviewed him the second time when he decided to open up, he told us that actually he had been hired to carry luggage and give massages, usually in the nude, with both men aroused.
I think the George Allen Rakers story is important just journalistically and for the historical record. He is the guy that writes academic papers by the hundreds, which wind up getting cited any time one of these Nazi-hearted little homophobic groups wants to substantiate some totally bullshit position. And if you read anti-gay propaganda, the discrediting of George Allen Rakers means that they're going to have to rip the bibliographies out of all of it.
Do you regret pushing the hiring of this Rakers guy? Or was that a mistake?
Well, knowing what I know now, I would never have hired him. At the time, I think it was the appropriate thing to do. We followed the advice of our appellate counsel, who was trying to prepare a case for appeal. Everything was designed to go to the Supreme Court. So we needed what Rakers provided, and he provided the expertise. I don't believe the gay family model is good for the kids. I'm not, first of all, it's against my religious views and my principles, so I don't favor it. I just personally am against it.